Hey everybody, welcome to Black Lotus Live, where we talk about all things strange and unusual. And first of all, happy Father's Day to everybody. And today we are welcoming back John Russell, who is a paranormal investigator and psychic. And he's also an avid motorcyclist, and that's why he was standing there with his motorcycle on the intro. John, it's great to have you back again. How have you been?
Hey guys, it's great to be here. I appreciate you having me back. Really looking forward to the show tonight, and really looking forward to discussing some UFO experiences with you.
Absolutely. What have you been up to lately?
Awesome.
Well, you know, I read full-time for a worldwide clientele, so that's still keeping me busy. I'm booked into October, going into November this year with readings. I've been, in the past year and a half, I've been interviewed on radio and podcast over 100 times.
Oh,
So that's taken up a little chunk of time. And then I'm writing on my third book, trying to meet a self-imposed deadline of September, October this year to get that published. So been staying busy.
Nice. It's good to keep busy.
Very good.
Most
Yeah.
definitely.
Keep me out of trouble.
Yeah.
Zach Diecast Monster. This cracks me up. Black Lettuce Produce.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
Anyway, so yeah, let's talk about some UFOs. I think the first thing I want to bring up and ask you opinions about is this new announcement from NASA that they're spending like $100 million on UFO research. What do you guys think about that? Personally, I think it's going to be just another big nothing burger.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. Well, you know, I've always said that any government, but particularly our own, but any government, when they say that they're going to do something, the first thing they do is they form a committee. And that committee is to study forming a committee, to think about getting through a committee, to maybe do something about a committee that might address some issue down the road, which of course means nothing ever gets done. So that's the first thing. And that's all governments, not just ours, but that's status quo for how the government works.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing that we have to look at with government is that government lies to us outrageously and continuously. And that's not conspiracy theory stuff. I mean, that's all you got to do is go back through history, seeing what the government's done, the Tuskegee experiment, things like that. Up on more recently, I can think of examples of government lying. The government said the Blackbird, the SR-71 Blackbird, our premier spy plane, they said that was decommissioned, not going to be in service any longer. And after that announcement was made, I was walking outside one bright, sunny, clear sky day to my car, and I heard this bizarre, strange double sonic boom, and looked up, and there in the blue sky, clearly silhouetted, was the unmistakable silhouette of the SR-71 coming over. And I was like, oh, you lying son of a guns. So I write about all these things constantly. The other thing about the formation of all of these things, now we're going to have a new UFO thing in government that they announced that they're going to do after they made the little piddling public disclosure announcement. Then we've got NASA coming along and saying, okay, we're going to form something to do this. We've got all these people forming things to study things. And nobody's doing anything. Nobody's producing any results. Everybody's spending millions and billions of dollars, and there's never any evidence. There's never any conclusion. Now, there's plenty of evidence outside of the government. The late Stanton Friedman once said that there's basically an embarrassment of riches of physical evidence. The UFOs have visited this planet, are visiting this planet, have landed on this planet. There's trace evidence. There was a very small announcement from our government in the papers years ago that said the Pentagon said, we have anomalous UFO debris in our possession and are testing it. And instead of the press going ape crazy wild and jumping all over it like a pack of rabid hyenas and never letting go, that just kind of slipped through the cracks and down the road we go, and no big thing. And so I was recently reading, I've just started, what's his name? I don't know how you pronounce his last name. Coulthart, the Australian, what is it, Ross Coulthart, Nick Coulthart? I'll look up his name here in a second, but he's just written a book, came out last year. The title of the book is In Plain Sight, and it's
I've heard of that.
UFOs, and he goes back and researches all of this stuff from all of the governments all over the world going way, 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 way back. And what's disheartening is there was basically almost the identical disclosure made way back then that was just recently made to us that the government did just here recently. And I thought, I was reading all of this and I thought, oh my God, how disheartening. You know, all we're doing is playing the same game of Russian roulette here with the government. It's like, we've done that, we've done that. We admitted this, we investigated, we covered up. Now here we are, we're coming out again doing the same thing. And it's these continual cover-ups that just go on and on and on. And even the people that have been rabidly anti-conspiracy theory are now saying, hey, look, it's obvious the government has been covering this stuff up for years, is still covering it up. Why? What is the purpose? What is the reasoning? And when we try and get to the bottom of that, then we run into the people that absolutely kill and derail serious UFO research. I remember reading one lady that, and these people will get on TV where a serious researcher won't. I remember reading about this one lady that she woke up every night at 2:00 and had to go to the bathroom. And when she went to the bathroom, the space alien appeared while she was using the bathroom and downloaded all this important universal knowledge into her head while she was going to the bathroom at 2 a.m. Now, that's the kind of nonsense that anybody that looks at the government report or looks at the news reports or whatever, and then encounters the vast majority of this nonsense out there is going to go, oh, well, it's all just nonsense. It's all just screwball stuff. It's just, and they're not going to get involved with it. So that derails serious research. And that's the problem that we've had all along.
Well, here's the thing. You had mentioned that, the government did admit to having this anomalous UFO debris, and nobody touched it.
No.
And so why all of a sudden are we having this huge resurgence in UFO research? Is it a distraction from something else that's going on?
I don't know. Again, going back to Coulthart's book, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, if I'm not, I apologize. But going back to his book, it was really interesting. I was unaware of the extensive history of the things that have come out. I knew about Blue Book and I knew about some of these other things and so on and so forth. But he has got some phenomenal documented research. And what we're seeing now basically seems to be a repeat of what has already been done before. And before, there were these huge disclosure items that the government made. There were all these things that came out. There was all this research done. There was all this backlash against the government disinformation coming sometimes from within the military and the government itself. And then it just kind of petered out and died. And now all of a sudden we seem to be coming into the same cycle again, which makes no sense. It's very strange. It's very weird. But one of the things that continues to complicate serious research is that if you look today, I was watching, I hate Dr. Phil, but my wife likes Dr. Phil, so she was watching Dr. Phil today, and they were going after this phony psychic, and so that perked up my attention. And so when they were talking to this phony psychic, Phil was quoting from Leviticus to him, where it says, you know, you shall not seek out wizards and this, that, and the other, and so on and so forth. All that prohibition against psychics and mediums and all this in Leviticus. And the audience erupted into this orgasmic, frenzied cheering and clapping at that Bible verse he quoted at the psychic. So this is the problem that we still have, is that when you go into any kind of serious research, especially if there's a psychic, a medium, any kind of paranormal phenomenon involved, people default to the knee-jerk Bible condemnation of it, or they default to the scientific, well, it's not reproducible, or it's not reproducible enough, or if it is demonstrable scientifically, like I've been on some podcasts with talking about Skinwalker Ranch and so on and so forth. And people absolutely just tear that show to shreds because this is not real science. This is not, they're not getting anything. And I'm like, do you watch the show? I mean, they've captured UFOs on camera. They captured when the rabbi came out there and did the ritual and to open the portal. The portal opened, they caught it on camera. They caught the temperature drop. They caught the black spot that they couldn't explain, that just disappeared where the camera was shooting. This black hole opened up there, and all these types of things that they're constantly capturing and getting. But you know, that people are saying, well, that's not science. They're not getting anything. Well, what do you have to do? Does the UFO have to come down, land in your yard, and take you away for you to believe? I mean, it gets ridiculous. So I think a lot of,
I was going to say, I think a lot of people, that's the only way they're going to believe if it actually comes down.
It's just ridiculous that we have all of this disinformation among ourselves and this unwillingness to believe. So you have these problems in all serious research where people default to some religious condemnation of it, or where they default to some scientific condemnation of it. And that's one of the things that, instead of uniting us, getting us together to where we can put significant pressure on the government for disclosure, it divides us and separates us and pushes us apart. The government doesn't have to worry. We're doing their disinformation for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think another thing, though, too, is we've come across so much false and you know, made up stuff. So it's really hard with tricks and stuff like that people can do with the cameras and whatever. I think it is going to be coming down to the simple fact that people aren't going to believe unless it happens to them, unless they actually see it for themselves.
Yeah. And what I try and tell people, there is so much
that's usually how it goes.
Yeah. There is so much skepticism out there, and I tell people, I say, look, just because something can be faked doesn't mean that the real thing doesn't exist.
Right. Exactly.
And that's what we have to understand. You know, everything on this planet can be faked. I mean, I saw a 60 Minutes special here a while back where this guy specialized in making a deep fake of Tom Cruise. And he has Tom Cruise singing and playing guitar and cooking and doing all this stuff, and it's not Tom Cruise. And so anything can be fake, but it doesn't mean that the real doesn't exist. And the problem with all of these things is that the paranormal realm isn't as demonstrable, isn't as repeatable as we want it to be. It's like I told my TV producer when we were shooting the TV pilot, I said, you can't make an appointment with the UFO. You know?
Right.
God, I wish we could, but it just doesn't work that way. Now, you look back through the history of paranormal research.
So many think you can.
Yeah. You look back through the history of paranormal research and look like at Stanford Research Institute, and they got some fairly repeatable results and some demonstrable things. And there's credible stuff there that SRI did. But a lot of scientists will take the view that, well, didn't happen in my lab, or, it's not been peer reviewed, or it's, well, that's SRI. It's not anything credible. They look down their noses at it. And so we have this continuing, ongoing problem establishing this credibility. And what's funny to me is even after the government comes out again recently and says, yeah, these are physical objects. They're detected on multiple sensors. They're seen by multiple witnesses, including qualified pilots and so on and so forth. They represent a threat to our national security and to our airspace. And even after that, people are like, well, okay, whatever.
Right. It's like I said when they were going to come out with the report to the Pentagon, and I said back then, first of all, they're not going to report everything they got.
Oh no, definitely not.
And secondly, they're just, I don't know. It's all crap in my opinion. And the thing is that it's affecting, excuse me, it's affecting the UFO community as far as skeptics go.
Oh, sure.
I've got nothing against healthy skepticism.
Right.
But like you said, that doesn't mean everything can or should be debunked.
Right.
If I could go back to this original question of why is NASA, what do I think about NASA talking about studying UFOs and why is this happening? I think, first of all, if any government agency comes out and says, hey, we're going to start studying UFOs, I think it's all bullshit unless they say, hey, we're going to continue to study UFOs, because it turns out we've been doing it for decades.
Bingo.
We're just going to be public. If they don't say that, then they're starting off with a lie. And so I don't believe them.
I agree 100%. 100%.
And so why are they doing it now? I think it's probably because they want control. They want to, perhaps they're seeing that it's going to be kind of hard to avoid UFOs because of technology or because of, consumer electronics. For whatever reason, they think it's going to become harder to deny that there's objects in our sky that are bizarre. And so now they want to become public because they want to get control of the narrative. They want to be able to say what it is. They want to be able to say it's just drones from another country. It's just this, it's just that. So that's why I think they're doing that.
I think it's a cover-up thing. And I always get, it's really hilarious to me when our government makes the statement either directly or by implication that they can't figure this technology out. Speaking of the UFOs, UAPs, whatever they want to call them now, they can't figure this out because they don't have sufficient technology to deal with, capturing this and interpreting what it is. And I know that has to be a lie because I was watching on TV decades ago. I was watching this documentary, and one of our former heads of the CIA was being interviewed, and he said, and I'm quoting him, and this was back during the Blackbird era, the SR-71 Blackbird. For any listeners that don't know what that was our premier spy plane, and it flew so high that it flew in subspace, and it flew so fast that no missile, no rocket, no bullet, no plane, nothing could catch it. And it had this camera on board that would do flyovers and take pictures all over the world, and we'd develop them, see what was going on. So this former head of the CIA said that you could take and on a putting green, put a golf ball here and 2 foot away from it, and that the SR-71 could fly over in subspace at speed, take a picture, and when you develop that film, you could clearly read which golf ball was a Titleist and which one was a McGregor. Wow. And that's decades old technology. Imagine what we can do now.
Yeah.
So that was ages ago. I saw this documentary. Now, here's one thing you have to realize. Anytime anybody that has something of importance, whether it's military, government, technology, whatever they reveal to the public, that's the tip of the iceberg to what they have and what they can do. They're not going to show their hand. They're not going to show you everything they've got. We don't know everything Elon Musk can do. We don't know everything that some scientific outfit can do. We don't know everything our government's capable of, our military's capable of. Whatever they reveal to us, that's just the tidbits that they want us to know. And that's the tip of the iceberg. And the technology will go tons deeper than what they reveal to us.
Oh, definitely.
So it's ludicrous to think that we can't accurately capture these things clearly on film. That's ludicrous. We've been doing this for, as you said, a bajillion years. And it's just insane to think that we don't have some type of reliable knowledge by now about who's piloting these things, where they come from, and what their intentions are.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
so, that's the thing that we have to come up against. And I've had several UFO encounters myself, and I have never been able to, not even psychically, get an accurate feedback as to who is piloting these, why, what their intent is. And I have had a psychic interaction with a UFO. And that was incredibly dramatic. I was sitting outside, and we live here in Florida. And of course, there's UFO sightings everywhere, but Florida is renowned for them.
I've heard that. Yeah.
I was sitting outside at night, and it was clear. And I've always, ever since I've been a kid, I love to sit outside at night and look at the stars. And I had this wonderful view of the sky and the home that we had here at the time. And I was sitting out there looking up, and over off to my right, where Venus was up and really exceptionally bright in the sky. And over in that direction, this orange orb came slowly coasting past where Venus was and appeared about as big and bright in the sky as Venus was, maybe a little closer. And I looked at that, and we live near a small airport, and I was used to planes flying by all the time. So I looked at it very carefully and very closely, and there was no engine noise, and there were no blinking lights, and it was of an unusual size and kind of translucent, kind of orange and moving very slowly, very steadily. And it came across, and I looked at it very carefully, and I have, even with glasses, I still have very good vision. At the time, I don't think I wore glasses, and I had like 20/10 in each eye. And I was looking at this thing, and I was like, that's definitely not a plane, definitely not a balloon, definitely not a rocket. And I'm watching it, and it comes around in front of me, and it's getting pretty close. And I said, my God, that's a UFO. And it wasn't the first one I'd seen, but it was the first one I'd seen at night like that close. And so I stood up, and I said psychically, I sent the psychic signal to it, the mental signal to it. And I also said verbally, I said, if you can hear me, stop and reverse course, back up. And this damn thing stops. And it hovers there for a second, and it backs up a little bit. And then it shoots up from where it was way down low to like where a low Cessna might be flying coming into the airport to land. It shoots from there up into the sky about where like the 747s and things fly, up to that altitude, and a split second time, no noise, no flame, no sound, no sonic boom, nothing, and hovers there a little bit, shoots up from there into the stars in about a second's time, kind of hovers, moves around slightly a little bit there, and then goes off into space.
Wow.
Wow.
And you think to this day, I'm not gobsmacked. That blew my mind just about more than anything I've ever experienced. And I've had a lot of manifestations in my life.
How close do you think it really got to you?
Do what now?
How close was the orb actually to you?
If it would have been like a Cessna flying by, I could have probably read the numbers off of it.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, so really, really, really close.
Yeah.
And the fact that this thing could and would respond to the psychic and verbal signal that I sent out to it, requesting that if it could hear me, that it would stop and reverse course. And the fact that it did.
Right.
That's kind of freaky, because that's an interaction with me from some intelligence, some source. But then to just shoot off up into the heavens like that and leave me with my mouth hanging open, and then no subsequent attempt at any establishment of any communication, like, hey, we're the guys came by and blew your mind, or hey, is there any communication we can have? Can we help you in some way, or this and the other? And I've made that request a lot. Hey guys, if you're up there, if you're hearing me still, if you can do something to help us, if you can give us some communication. I don't want a thrill here. I want something that's going to be helpful to me and to humanity at large. If there's this superior intelligence, superior technology, throw us a bone, help us cure cancer, help us get the little kids out of St. Jude Children's Hospital, help us figure out some of the plagues and the problems of illness and sickness on this planet, help us to come to a better understanding and be a more peaceful people, that we're not constantly involved in wars as we have been since the beginning of the planet. If you're so advanced and
we've already had the cure for that. We've already had the cure for that, but the government's not going to change. We've had the cure for cancer for a long time, but it's not going to give that out because they're pharmaceutically, the pharmaceutical is what feeds them. So they're not going to give you that.
We may.
And it's a way of depopulation.
I remember my wife and I were on a road trip. And this is when we lived up north, and we had the radio on one morning. We'd get up real early and start driving, and we used to take a lot of road trips, and I listened to the radio all the time. So we had the radio on, and we hit this talk show, and I don't normally like radio talk shows, but this guy was talking about we cured cancer, and so that got our attention. I was like, whoa, wait, what? So he was talking to this guy, and he said that he was on this research team. And he said he went through all this stuff, and we were listening. And he said, and we cured cancer. And the talk show host said, okay, anybody can say this, and there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there, and there's a lot of stuff against Big Pharma and all this. So you got to give me something to hang my hat on here. And so the guy said, well, I'll tell you my name, my research team, where we were at, all this and all that. And he said, there's enough out there that if you want to check me out, you can go off the air for a second, take a commercial, whatever, come back, you can find out who I am and verify most of this. And whether this was a setup or not, I have no idea, but the guy goes off the air, he comes back on, he says, okay, I've verified that you said who you said you were, and so on and so forth. Let's continue the conversation. And he said, well, my team cured cancer, not a cancer. We came up with a cure that worked for all cancers. And he said, we were high-fiving and celebrating and thank God. And now we're going to get all this research money and everything else. And he said, they came in, just totally, completely shut us down.
Sure.
And that was the end of the story.
Follow the money.
Yeah, follow the money. So it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me a bit. So we have all of these things out there that you can go back and demonstrate that the government has done, has hidden, has corrupted, has, set out disinformation on. And it's not the tinfoil hat crowd saying this any longer. It's not, the conspiracy theory crowd. I mean, things are getting pretty easy to research now because of the research that's been done in the past by credible people, by credible news sources, by credible investigative reporters. And so it's becoming an easier and easier matter now to go out and say, hey, we've had the wool pulled over our eyes for a long time here. And, again, it goes back to trying to get into what the truth is, and particularly with UFOs, why are they here? They've been here a long, long time. They've been here before our technology existed at all. And what is their purpose? Who pilots them? Are there several species, several races? Are there several, iterations of this thing? What's going on? And that's what we want to know. And it's not going to kill us to find out. The excuse has been for a long time from several people that, well, it would cause worldwide panic. No, it wouldn't. It would demolish our economic system. No, it wouldn't. It would demolish our energy system. No, it wouldn't. It would kill our healthcare system. No, it wouldn't. It would demolish religion as we know it. No, it wouldn't. Because we're going to basically react like we would normally react to anything else. And as far as the religious reaction, I've always told people, if one were to land tomorrow physically and be on the news, there would be a group from some Christian church going and surrounding the thing, holding hands and praying, Jesus save the aliens. It's not going to destroy religion. You're still going to hold to your religious belief. That's not going to change overnight. It wouldn't kill our economy overnight. It wouldn't kill our energy overnight, because even if they gave us solutions to things, it would take a long time to introduce that into our existing technology and to the way things are wired, the way things are run. So we can handle this. It's like it's not any big deal, you know.
So why do you think that they actually are not telling us?
That's the big question. That's what we don't have the definitive answer to, is why is this hidden? There's a lot of speculation out there, and unfortunately it is just that. It is just speculation. There's some that's fairly reasonable speculation. And going back a long ways, some of that speculation has been that the government has made some type of agreement or arrangement with some of these species, some of these intelligences, for whatever reason. And that's a reasonable speculation. That's a reasonable possibility. But at this point, that is just still speculation. There's nothing proven there. So
you saw what happened during the beginning of the pandemic. Yeah. You saw how people reacted to that and just flipped out.
Yeah.
Don't you think that there will be a hint of that, at least? If
there would be a hint of that, but not, with the pandemic, what happened with people, that was played up, I think, by the news and kind of in a minority. I don't think a lot of people did that. I think most people looked at the people that were hoarding toilet paper and said, what is wrong with you? Hoarding toilet paper isn't going to save you from a virus. So I think that was kind of in the minority that people did that. Yeah, people do get scared. People do overreact. But I don't think that's the majority of people.
I wonder if this has been suggested. I wonder if the government, one of the reasons that they're not disclosing is because what they don't know. Like, for instance, they know that extraterrestrials are real. They know they're piloted by non-humans. But perhaps that's where it ends. Perhaps they don't know anything besides that. And so I could see how if they were to disclose, people would want answers. They would be like, okay, so UFOs are real. There's real biological entities piloting them. Where do they come from? What do they want? If the government doesn't have those answers, which is possible they don't, then that would put them in a bad spot because, the government, in some regards, we expect them to be like our parents, so a little kid expects his parents to be able to answer everything. So as a parent, you wouldn't tell your child something scary if you couldn't reassure them that, though I know it sounds scary, but this is actually what's happening. If a parent is also scared, they probably wouldn't disclose something to their children.
Right. That is good. That is a good theory, and that's a strong possibility. The reason that I can't accept that at full face value is because our government has all these phenomenal technological capabilities and all this intelligence gathering capability, and we've had that for all these years now, and I just find it mind-boggling that they couldn't know something definitive at this point.
I think there's money being made somewhere, and I think that's
a very, very strong possibility. Again, going back to what Damien said, follow the money trail.
Follow them, yeah, exactly. So somehow
those are your black projects.
Yeah. Probably, somebody's holding on to money somewhere. Somebody's trading, getting something out of it.
We know in war there's money to be made, in the military there's money to be made, and all of these things there's a huge amount of money to be made. And the problem in dealing with money and power is that I've always said, if you want to get yourself in deep, dark, serious trouble, mess with a man's pocketbook. Mess with a man's wallet. You do that, you're going to get yourself in a world of hurt and a world of trouble. And that's played out again over and over and over throughout the world in politics and everything. And it was really interesting because there's a guy that hosts every year. He does a podcast, and every year he hosts the Big Phone Home, and that's an homage to ET, Phone Home ET.
I've heard about this.
Every year he gets the UFO experts from all over the world, and they come on and talk about their latest research, what they might have discovered, or what their latest theory is, or whatever. Well, in the second one that he did, he got a U.S. congressman on. And the U.S. congressman basically said, he said, well, I'm bound by my oaths of secrecy and non-disclosure and everything else. But he just basically said that, yes, they are real. And it's not earthly technology, was basically what he said. And he was saying in the process of trying to achieve disclosure, He was talking about the power structure and the money structure that's in place and the difficulty in fighting that. And he said, look, he said, we're talking about people that have interests of millions and maybe billions of dollars. And he said, you know, $100 drug deal gone wrong will get you killed. And you start messing with people that have millions of dollars at heart, at interest. He said that's when guys like me commit suicide by 2 bullets to the back of the head.
Mm-hmm.
You know, start stirring up things, start muddying the waters.
Like Phil Schneider.
Yeah, he was talking about the power structure that still remains there and how difficult it is to fight that. And he was talking about one of the guys in the liquor lobby when he was coming up. And the guy, he said, this guy was stereotypical, glass of bourbon in one hand, cigar in the other. And he said, I'm going to tell you something. He said, I control things here. I'm the power structure here. And he says, congressmen are going to come and go, but I'm going to be here forever calling the shots. And he said, as I went on up and became a congressman, that guy's still there. And he's still calling the shots, you know. So this is the problem. We have all this power in place. We have all this money in place. And you start disturbing that, you stir up a hornet's nest. And so you have these problems, again, going back to the disbelief. You have the problems of the power structure, the establishment that's in place. You have the problem of religion. There was one documentary I watched where one person was saying that there are so many people, and this congressman kind of echoed that. He said there's so many people in politics that are just devout, rabid Christians, whether they act like it or not, but they're devout, rabid Christians. And we don't investigate UFOs. That's demonic. That's of the devil. We don't mess with that stuff.
Right.
So you have that mindset to contend with. So when you're looking at this, it's a wonder we have anything at all out there, because you've got all this scattered, you know, noise of all this disbelief, whether it comes from the religious community, the scientific community, that messes with our pocketbook, it messes with our belief system, it messes with our power structure. We have a lot to get through there. We have a lot to deal with. And so those are some of the things that we have to confront. And we have to learn ways to put aside all of these. You know, I've been, like I say, I was interviewed over 100 times in the past year and a half. So I've been on a lot of radio shows, a lot of podcasts, and I'll watch the chat bars on some of the podcasts I'm in. And it's really hilarious, because it's like, well, I believe in psychics, but I don't believe in UFOs. Well, I believe in UFOs, but I don't believe in Bigfoot. Well, I believe in Bigfoot, but I don't believe it, you know, and on and on and on and on. And it's like, okay, if one thing's possible, aren't other things possible? You know,
right?
We have to open the door to at least, okay, well, maybe, you know.
I've been saying that for years.
Yeah, and we have to separate ourselves. We have to realize it's all under one umbrella.
I've been wanting to mention this research paper going back. You were talking early on in this conversation. You were talking about psychic abilities,
right? How
people don't want to believe it. How they talk about there's no peer-reviewed research. But I always like to mention there's this paper. Okay, there's this journal. So you know the way scientists let the world know what their discoveries are is they publish in a scientific journal, and there's hundreds or thousands of them. They all have different topics. Some of them are about fish. Some of them are about pediatricians, whatever. But there's this one journal. There's this one journal called the American Psychological Association. Okay, now this is not a paranormal journal. This is a legit medical journal. So they published a paper. The paper was studied. The title of this paper is "The Experimental Evidence for Parapsychological Phenomenon: A Review." Now, what this paper found is that there is evidence for parapsychological phenomenon. And that's a peer-reviewed paper. I mean, that's something I mentioned to skeptics, scientific skeptics about scientific research. I'm like, the thing that you're asking for a research paper published in a peer-reviewed journal. It exists.
It's out there.
It's out there. It exists. It's legitimate. And that surprises. I told a friend one time, and it surprised him. He's a medical doctor. And it was funny. It was funny because he was obviously in discomfort. You know, he was trying to rationalize it. He was like reading the paper. You know, he was trying to do everything to figure out how it was not real. And then he figured out that the journal was a legitimate journal. So he's like, okay, I can't say that. I can't say it's a bad journal. And it was just it was interesting seeing all the discomfort because
the denial process there.
Yeah.
And that's, that's one of the frustrating things. And then I think that, not only do we have all these issues that we've already discussed on a personal level, we have these friends. They were friends of my wife. And then I met him, and the guy learned I was a psychic, and he used to make fun of me, and I didn't care. And I told him one day, I said, listen, I said, in my experience, if anybody is being absolutely, totally, completely honest from their heart, everybody on this planet has had one experience in their life that they can't explain by rational means. And he's like, yeah, he's like, no, not me. I said, never, nothing odd that nothing. Nope, never. And he maintained that. And so one night my wife was going over to visit them, and I was ill, and I stayed home. And I would have given my teeth if I could have been there, because the subject turned to the paranormal. And he goes, well, yeah, I see stuff all the time. I see people walk through the house out of the corner of my eye and then disappear. I see doors open and close by themselves. But I just talk it up to a good imagination. And it's like, man, you're witnessing what we've talked about, and you're admitting to what I told you, and you're just saying, no, yeah, I see it all the time, but it's just got to be my imagination. And everybody's like, okay, so the door physically
it's less frightening that way.
No person in the house, no pets, no giraffes, and that's your imagination. And he just, so, there's so much that we're up against here. And it's difficult to wade through. And I think our government loves that. I think they love the fact that, we're our own worst enemy out here when it comes to this research.
Your story about your friend and his denial, but he's seeing things, that made me think about what my attitude is toward, because there's people that are interested in the paranormal and there's people that are not interested. Okay. Right. And we have to get along with each other in order for this thing to work out. So
absolutely.
This is what I personally think. I think I'm totally cool with somebody saying, like, you know what? I don't want to talk about the paranormal. It doesn't interest me. It makes me uncomfortable. I don't want to talk about it. That's cool with me. But the problem I have is I don't want them to say, don't study that. Exactly. I don't want them to say, there's no way that could be real.
Exactly.
Those are the statements I don't think they're not correct.
Yeah.
If they don't want me to talk about it, that's fine. I will not talk about it with them. I can respect that. But I don't like them saying, like, there's nothing to it. You shouldn't waste your time. Those are the comments.
Right. Yeah, I agree 100%. And we have so many problems out there with so-called authorities, like the Amazing Randy when he was alive. For people that may not know, the Amazing Randy was a professional magician like David Copperfield and so on and so forth. And Randy made it his life's work to debunk everything psychic, mystical, paranormal. And he also made it his life's work to destroy Uri Geller, the famous Israeli psychic.
Oh, right.
And I know Uri. I've met him personally, and I've watched his demonstration in person. I can tell you he's the real deal. And our own government, our alphabet agencies say that Uri Geller is the real deal. So that should be enough for people, but it's not. It's still debated to this day. But anyways, we have all this fuzz to get through, and then somebody like the Amazing Randy comes along. And he had the $1 million challenge. So for years and years, they put up $1 million for anybody that could come forward and demonstrate any psychic ability that he could look at and analyze and say, well, this is not a sleight of hand trick, magic trick, or whatever. And of course, nobody ever got the prize. Well, the reason nobody ever got the prize, I saw Randy's own documentary on TV one time. And he was going through how he exposed all the people that applied for the $1 million prize and da-da-da-da-da. And then he says, there was this guy who claimed to be a psychic that could do psychometry and tell things about things and this, that, and the other. So I got this object that I knew that nobody, and I believe he may have even said not even his closest friends or whatever would have known the origin of it or who got it or whatever. So, the psychic comes, Randy gives him this object, and the guy says, oh, this was given to you by a friend, I believe he said. And so Randy would say to the order of, well, that's an easy guess. And then the guy begins to tell him, and this is where it came from, and so on and so forth. And this is how your friend looked, and all of these things about the object and its origin and who gave it to Randy, that by Randy's own admission was 100% accurate, 100% correct. And then the guy says, the psychic says, and there's something unusual about your friend's neck. There's something, and he didn't say clerical collar. He said, it reminds me like a clerical collar. He said, there's something unusual around your friend's neck, something that he wears. It's like a collar of some kind. And Randy said, nope, incorrect. And because he had said like a clerical collar, Randy said he said a clerical collar, or that he wore a clerical collar or something. And so Randy's reasoning, and this is Randy's own words, he said, if one thing's incorrect, now it wasn't incorrect. That's not what the guy said. He said, if one thing's incorrect, everything's incorrect. So Randy had admitted the guy had been 100% accurate up to that point, but one thing negated everything that the guy got right. And the interesting thing was about Randy's friend was he had something unusual about his neck, this unusual collar. He was fond of wearing turtlenecks. And the guy said, there's something odd about it. He said, like a collar around his neck. He said, there's something unusual around his neck about the clothes he wears. Well, the guy wore turtlenecks a lot. So, yeah, that's unusual. It's like a collar. There's something unusual around your neck. Not many people wear turtlenecks anymore. And this guy wore turtlenecks frequently. So that was a
wordplay.
Yeah.
But according to Randy, no, if you get one thing wrong.
Yeah, he used wordplay.
Yeah, then it's all wrong. And so this friend of mine that I used to be interviewed on his radio show when I was living up in New York, he called me one day and he says, John, guess who I'm going to have on the show? I said, who? He said, Randy. I said, oh my God. He said, can you tune in? Can you be in on it? And I said, no, my schedule wouldn't allow it that day and I couldn't be in. He said, well, what do you want me to ask him? And I said, well, ask him about the psychic and that scenario. And then ask him if he's going to be completely honest, and there at least one thing in his life that he's experienced that he doesn't have a logical explanation for. So I didn't even get to hear the show. I was so busy. And so my friend interviewed Randy, and then he called me back. I said, so what did he say? Did you ask him? He said, yeah. He said, I told him in detail about, you seeing the show and him with the guy with the psychic and him admitting that things were 100% accurate up to that point. And then how could he just denigrate all the 100% right answers for one of his own misinterpretations? And his only response was, we set things up beforehand. It's my rules. And I say that if one thing's wrong, everything's wrong. And I determine what's wrong. Next question.
Wow.
And so he asked him about, he said, well, if you're going to be totally, completely honest, haven't you ever experienced at least one thing in your life that you have no rational explanation for? No. Next question. So that's not skepticism. That's just outright, I'm going to debunk everything that comes down the pike, no matter who it comes from, no matter what it is, no matter what occurs, it's wrong because I say it's wrong. So,
exactly.
There's another noted skeptic now. He was in the chat room one night on one of the podcasts I was on. He was like, John, why don't you go for this challenge? There's another challenge out there apparently floating around for psychics. And he's like, why don't you go for this challenge? And I was like, are you kidding me? It's a waste of time, effort, and energy from the get-go because it's a foregone conclusion. If I were to come out there and this guy brought me a spoon out of his own drawer and he held it and I bent it in his hand, no, something's wrong here. There's some trick. Some guy snuck in, put a trick spoon in here. So they're not going to accept it no matter what you do. And so I learned a long time ago that there's, people like that have made up their mind not to believe. They're going to continue not to believe if they're confronted with physical evidence.
Exactly.
And that goes back to these.
That's
all these
just like
UFO
questions
videos.
with us and our government.
Mm-hmm.
But this goes back to all those UFO videos we're seeing today.
Right.
Ralph and I belong to a lot of these, Kimberly as well, a lot of these UFO groups on Facebook.
Right.
And, somebody puts up a video and people are immediately denying it. Yep. It's CGI. It's CGI. Yeah. Without, the video.
It's a camera artifact.
Yeah, it's a camera. You're exactly. Now, I will agree that a lot of them can be easily dismissed.
Right.
But there have been some out there that I haven't been able
easily dismissed.
Terry, Ralph, and I have seen a lot of UFOs since we
Mhm.
moved to Las Vegas.
Mhm.
I mean, people say, you know, I'd like to see a UFO, and it's like, well, get your butt out to Las Vegas and look up.
There you go.
Or Florida.
And,
Yeah, or
you know,
Florida.
in Florida, in fact, I saw something I couldn't explain over Hernando Beach.
Mhm.
And funny enough, I was standing on a pier over the beach, and I looked up, and there was this. The best way I can describe it was a silver hamburger,
Mhm.
you know, and it hovered there for a couple of minutes. And I looked at the people on the beach; they were all pointing at it.
Yeah,
So I know it wasn't a trick of my imagination.
exactly.
And then later on, I met Kimberly, and Kimberly has a photo of the exact same thing I saw in Florida.
Oh, wow.
But hers was over a lake in Ohio.
As a matter of the fact, it looks like Lake Erie.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that picture. I remember you posted it, Kim. Yep.
But the picture on not Linda, I forget, Costa, on her book, that's the picture. That's the same
Costa.
picture of the picture. Like I snapped. Yeah, Cheryl's. Yeah.
Yeah.
But just like I said, that picture that I got, I was looking at the odd ice circles, and the crafts were never even visible. They were cloaked.
Mm-hmm.
And MUFON actually took that picture twice and authenticated it. And they even pinpointed exactly where I said, you know, I took the picture and everything.
Yeah.
And one of the guys flagged there was 10 possibilities of others in that one picture.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I put that on my computer, it was gone. Every time. I don't even have a picture of it. Of the 10, with where it's marked with the 10 flags, but I've got the original picture.
Wow, that's bizarre. Yeah, there's plenty of good photographic evidence out there. There's plenty of good video evidence out there. And it amazes me that, you know, like you say, the second this shows up, there's people ready to dogpile it and say, you know, this is fake. This is CGI. These are camera artifacts or whatever. And it's like, you know, it just boggles my mind that these denials are there and people claim to want to know, but then when you present them with evidence, you know, they attack it and jump all over it. And, you know, it's always been that way with me, like in the psychic realm as a psychic, people do the same thing. And like I was giving you the example, you know, the Dr. Phil show, and he quotes the verse from Leviticus to the psychic condemning psychics, and the audience just erupted into these cheers. But how many of those people, after they left that show, are making an appointment with their psychic? You know, that's one of the things I discovered. I'm also an ordained minister, not the degree mill kind. I was ordained
Always
in a church
like that.
And I was actually an associate pastor of a small church for a very short period of time. And everybody in there, you know, knows all the condemnations from the Bible about, you know, wizardry and horoscopes and all these types of things. And of course, they all go and see psychics, and they all read their horoscope in the daily paper and everything else. And they come to church Sunday and denounce it, you know, but most of them practice it. So it's a really hilarious thing, the hypocrisy that's there and the duplicity that's there on the part of everybody. And people are so afraid to go outside of the ranks of a particular religion or belief system, even in the psychic and spiritual community. I was asked one time, this pagan society, formerly pagan, I mean, really honest to God pagan. It's not just pagan in name, but, you know, the pagan religion. They called me and asked me to be a guest on their radio show, and they asked me if I was a pagan. And I said, well, I'm not a pagan per se, but there are a lot of pagan principles that I probably hold near and dear to my heart, you know, nature spirits and the appreciation of nature and so on and so forth, philosophies and things. And we discussed that, I'd been a psychic for all these years, had experienced all these physical paranormal manifestations that other people had seen and experienced as well. And all of these great things. Well, that's great, but are you a pagan? I was like, no, I'm not a pagan. Well, then they didn't want me for their show because I wasn't a pagan,
Sure.
So we have all these difficulties getting past all of these belief systems, whatever they are, and it exists in the paranormal community, exists in the UFO community, exists in the spiritual community, as well as the religious community, into politics, into science, so on and so forth. So we have all this dogma, tradition, and ritual. Scientists are always looking at things and discounting things as superstition or dogma or ritual or tradition or whatever. And science is full of dogma and tradition and ritual and its own version of superstition. An honest scientist will admit that. I was reading something here the other day, you said 15 scientists in a room and asked them what a scientific principle is, you're probably going to get 15 different answers. So science has its own problems and coming up with things and agreeing on things. But they like to hold themselves up as the arbiter of all truth and the judge of all things that are dishonest or deceitful or not provable or whatever. And the problem that we're encountering right now, and all this, especially with UFO research, is that we have got to get together reputable, open-minded scientists, psychics, mediums, whatever, and get all of these disciplines working together under one roof. And not, okay, I'm a scientist, you have to do this. No, bring your science in, do your thing. I'm going to come in as a psychic, do my thing. Some of the guy's going to come in with his expertise, do his thing, but we're all going to focus on all this one experiment, getting what we can out of this one thing, discovering what we can out of this one thing. How do we get the truth out of this? How do we discover what's really happening and what's going on? You bring your expertise and lend that. I'll bring mine and lend that. Somebody else brings theirs and lends that. And we do that repeatedly until we discover something. And it's like I'm always tweeting Brandon Fugel, the owner of Skinwalker Ranch. So I'm saying, Brandon, the science is fine, but the science is never going to catch the paranormal, at least not at this stage of the game. We're just not advanced enough to do it. Why do I say that? Well, go back to the origin of EVP, electronic voice phenomena, where you record electronic voices, spirit voices, on either tape or digital or whatever. And a long, long time ago, you'd get, this is Bill, or you get, I understand a car and this and it. And now here we are, all these years later, we have all this advanced technology, we have all these great things. And what do we get all these years later? This is Bill. On a car. So the advancements that we've made are basically negligible in trying to keep up with the paranormal and discover anything from paranormal. So
the thing is, though, John, is, doing something like this, look at UFO Twitter and how much people argue on there constantly.
Oh, yeah.
I have a feeling doing something like this would be like herding cats.
It is.
I don't think it would be possible. And I don't mean to sound negative about that. It's just that I follow, well, I'm not on UFO Twitter. I don't do Twitter, but I do see it.
Yeah.
And I see what people are arguing about constantly. I know. And it's a constant bicker.
It is.
And so, I just don't think, it's a nice idea.
It is. But it is difficult. It's extremely, extremely difficult. And I think what you have to do is, if you can look at embracing the concept that I've talked about, if you can get that corporation in just a small unit and then produce these demonstrable results that may even be somewhat semi-repeatable, and then, like he said, if you could get it peer-reviewed, if you could get it out there, accepted in anything reliable, and then try and expand out from that. I agree that at large, that's an impossible dream, but we may be able to do it, start small, get some core thing established that's undeniable, and then possibly grow it out from there. And it's going to be difficult, but I think like the congressman said, we the people can band together and push for this disclosure. Right. Something very interesting. He said, if you're going to, and they said, well, what's the best way to do that? He said, write your congressman. And he said, the interesting thing now is, he said, we get thousands of emails every day. So if you really want to get my attention, write a letter, stamp it, put it in the mail, because an actual physical letter that comes across my desk is a novelty. And that's going to get my attention. Sure. And he said, so that's what you have to do. He said, you write your congressman. And I think, too, that we have to understand whatever process that we choose to do this, however we choose to do this, it takes this tremendous persistence and not giving up. And most people are like, well, I tried, and they stop, or they encounter some obstacle or some resistance, or some people make fun of them, or this happens or that happens or whatever, and they stop. And what we have to do is we have to continue. We have to persevere no matter what. I've done that in the psychic realm as a psychic, and with what I do, that's one of the most made fun of, most denigrated professions that there is, and sometimes rightfully so, because of all the fakes and phonies out there. But I have persevered in this through all kinds of hideous personal attacks on myself, because I know it's real. I believe in what I'm doing. I have the feedback from hundreds of clients, thousands of clients over the years, all over the world, that, vindicate what I'm doing, say that I'm accurate in my insights, I'm accurate in my predictions. I've been a great help to their lives. I've enabled them to grow and to have a better connection with spirit, with themselves, with others, to live a better life. So to me, that was important enough to keep fighting for. And I persisted in that. I've done this professionally for 50 years. And it's been god-awful hard at times, and it's been heartbreaking at times, and it's been very difficult. And then when I've been attacked personally and called everything from a dupe to the son of the devil himself, it becomes difficult. But I believed in what I was doing strongly enough to press forward and to continue regardless. And I think that's the mindset that we have to find in people, or develop in people, when we're trying to do this, especially about UFOs, is like, okay, we have to come together, like the congressman said. We are the disclosure, and if we come together and put enough pressure on in the right way, we can at least force their hand a little bit. And right. He was saying that if we don't do that now, that he thinks it's going to close down to the point that there won't be any such thing as a Freedom of Information Act. He said, you'll ask for, excuse me, any kind of document, all you'll get back is blank pieces of paper that won't even be redacted. And so he says he foresees that if we don't pursue this now and really yank that door open, that it's just going to be, there'll be so much secrecy in the future that nothing will come out, nothing will be leaked out. Information.
I totally agree with it, because somebody said something recently, and it made a lot of sense to me, and that is that the government is never going to disclose anything. True disclosure is going to have to come from us in the UFO field.
Yeah.
It's going to need to come from channels like this on YouTube and podcasts, and getting the word out there. And that's real disclosure.
Yeah.
Because I think we know what's going on.
Right.
But I don't think the government is ever going to give us that information.
I think if we can get them somehow, if we can get them between a rock and a hard place, and I don't know how that is. I believe it's accomplishable. I'm just not sure how. But if we can get them between a rock and a hard place, and make it to where it's going to be expedient for them to disclose something, I believe that we can do that. We just have to figure out how to get them between that rock and that hard place. And I don't know how that'll occur. One thing that would be of immense help was if the mainstream press would really dig into this like they should be digging into it, and not let go of it. And, if you're hounded every day, it's like I was telling, I was asked on this podcast, not the phone home, but the people that do that podcast, I was interviewed by them on their regular podcast. And they said, how do we do this? And I said, well, you initiate that process. You contact your congressman, you demand answers from all the avenues out there that there are, but you don't stop. Because I said, if a congressman gets 10,000 letters in 1 month, and 100 the next, and 3 the next, they're not going to pay any attention. They're not going to do anything. But if they get 10,000 letters one month, and then the next month they get 30,000 letters. The next month they get 2,000. The next month they get 50,000. The next month they get 10,000, and it just keeps going, just keeps going, just keeps going. They're going to have to do something. You know, they can't ignore the masses and the repetition over time. They're going to have to do something. So
let's hope so.
Yeah, that's one of the ways we can press this.
I'm thinking that they're only going to do something if it profits them.
Right.
I was thinking
and somehow we have to figure out a way to make that profitable, to make it, you know, if it's nothing else, then look what a hero I am. I came out and told the truth about this aspect of it. If we could get somebody to do that, that would be great.
Another scenario would be if we have another Phoenix Lights scenario where where the UFOs themselves make it like undeniable. That's another reason why we would get it. But it seems like that they don't want it. That whatever's flying these UFOs, they don't want that. Right. They don't want to have another Phoenix Lights. But if they did, that would force their hand, I think.
I think so. I think that would be a help. So I think that, you know, anything that we can do in that regard, you know, and then again, it comes back to us to get serious about the phenomena. And the problem that we have in dealing with the phenomena is that it doesn't seem to want any type of real communication or real revelation. I mean, we got a lot of stories out there, like the lady at 2 in the morning going to the bathroom, that the aliens download the truth of the universe to her and stuff like that. We have a lot of nonsense out there like that, but we don't have any real communication or contact or anything that you can hang your hat on. There was I was listening on a podcast to one of the MUFON heads, one of the MUFON field investigators, and maybe I'll think of his name here in a second, but he was saying that we have an abundance of reports of abductions and horrific experiments and things done against our will. But where is that story that I was lost in the woods at night and this UFO came over, shone down a beam of light and led me safely out of the woods? Where is that story? We don't have those. But we have cattle mutilations, we have abductions, we have horrific experiments, we have missing time, we have radiation burns, we have sicknesses, we have all these things in reference to contact with the UFOs and with ETs, whatever these creatures are, whatever these intelligences are. So the problem that we face in all this and trying to get some type of contact established or something good, some type of interaction there, is it all seems to be one way. It seems to be coming our way from them, and we're going to do what we want to. We'll daze you and amaze you and leave you with your mouth hanging open while we zip off into the heavens and you're wondering what the heck's going on. So that seems to be the difficulty we have in trying to establish some type of meaningful communication outside from the government.
Well, we're a little past the hour now, so I think we're going to get out of here.
Okay.
John, thank you very much for being on the show.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
As always.
It's been a delight to be here. I appreciate all you guys. Appreciate being here. It's a good opening to the discussion, and hopefully there's going to be enough people out there that pick it up and carry on in a way that at some point we can make some meaningful disclosure and find out what's going on here.
Viewers, thanks a lot for watching. Make sure to hit like and subscribe. And one of the ways we can make this kind of disclosure is by sharing stuff like this with your friends who are into these topics. And hopefully they'll share it as well, you know, and get the word out there. So make sure to share this, please. Anyway, like to thank the moderators that were in the room.
Thank you, moderators. Thank you so much.
And until next time, keep thinking and question everything.
Good night.